Hello, and welcome to Scuttlebutt, the War Movie Review Podcast. We're happy to have you with us as we take a look at films from the dawn of cinema to today. We aim to provide a raw and unapologetic review of each film's cinematography, historical accuracy, and delivery. In the process of analysis, certain details will be revealed. These spoilers are only divulged to ensure a fair assessment of each film. We head north to Thermopylae Pass this week with Zack Snyder's 2007 Second Greco-Persian War Epic 300. Unfortunately, Michael has bent his knee and joined Xerxes in his quest to conquer Greece.
Xerxes.
So now I am only joined by Mike B.
Yep.
And Nate.
Bow to my will, Michael, and the power of Greece will be yours.
Sorry. You're overdoing it a little bit.
Well, duh. That's what I always do.
I am very kind.
Yeah, I know.
Michael is now the guy that has the sharpened, femurs, and he's cutting off dudes' heads.
Oh,
do you feel satiated?
I must now consume your soul to become a real boy.
God.
Yeah.
I think still gives me horrors. Anyway, sorry, Brian. We were trolling each other. Sorry.
What do you guys think of this comic book?
Yeah, thank you for stating that right off the bat.
Yeah.
I'm going to told my buddy that we were going to do this week, and he was like, "Please, for the love of God, tell people it's a comic book movie and not a real historical movie." I'm like, don't worry, it's a blanket fucking statement, and so there you go, Jacob. Anyway, but no, I mean I was 6. We were talking about before we hit the record button, but we were talking about how I was about 16, Mike was like 16, 17, and Brian had never seen this when we saw, and so we were talking about like when we had last seen it, and I think I had seen it around. I've watched it a few times because I'm actually a huge fan, a guilty pleasure for the sequel, which is 300 Rise of an Empire, only because Eva Green is naked in that, so it's just really good. But this movie, it's funny. It's just like going back and watching it again with all the other movies that we've ever watched, because I can't really keep it to the same. It's hard to not compare it to everything else because it is a comic book movie, but at the same time, there is an essence of the historical stuff within it. Excuse me, it is a historical fiction, and that is what I have to kind of base it on. When we get those movies that say like based on true events, but they're really not, like that's the way I'm kind of judging this. So the basic knowledge that I know, thanks to Sean, after a week of studying, is that there are little essences of this film that are true to the stories of ancient history, but that's all it is. Otherwise, it's just a teenager boy's wet dream in 2006, because that really was what it was. But no, I mean it very much was a movie built for the time it was built in, because, and I say that for this reason alone, is that it is a movie that was supposed to be filmed for 3D cinema. This is the launch of 3D cinema. I know this because I was one of those guys who walked in with those glasses and sat down, and the movie is very much filmed to be for 3D spectacle. So you're talking like the old the gray glasses you would wear in the theater, and the whole point of the film was to have spears poking out at you, and this huge kind of like CG, like just the swords and shields are supposed to be right at you, and that movie is definitely filmed cinematically for that. But I thoroughly enjoy watching it as a guilty pleasure. So I got more to say, but I'll save some of it for later. But I don't know, Brian, why don't you go?
Yeah, so I was a little younger than you guys. I was just finishing up middle school when this film came out. And it was a cultural event. It was huge. Fucking everybody wanted to see this movie. And everybody talked about this movie throughout the whole year. And I never saw it. Not because I was too young or anything like that. I just really didn't care. And even back then, I was surrounded by military film snobs who'd only watch like Cross of Iron and shit like that, and one of them being Sean. So I just never watched it, and even when it was on TV a billion times, And, you know, this is definitely a TNT movie. And fast forward, finally seeing it, it was just funny to finally watch this thing that was such a big event for people that lived through it, or at least saw the ads for it all the time. And it was interesting, you know, it was what I expected. It reminded me of other things made around that time, most notably Sin City. I really thought about that, like, for a good deal of the film, which is a film I haven't seen all the way through. I've only seen parts, but probably one of Bruce Willis's best. But no, it was very interesting. And yeah, ridiculous at times. Very, very interesting cast as well, because a lot of those people went on to do some very interesting and very different stuff after this, like Xerxes. But no, overall, I don't know. It was an interesting movie. I was really expecting to hate it the whole fucking time. Be like, this is just stupid, bombastic crap, which a lot of it is at points. But I don't know. It was more nostalgic than anything for me. I don't know. It's like I finally saw something that everybody my age saw 15 years ago. So.
Yeah. So, like we were saying, I saw it when it came out on DVD, end of the summer, fall of 2007, and it was at somebody's house. And I was like, okay, that's cool. It's interesting. It's got a lot of blood and gore, all the scenes. I didn't know it was supposed to be shot for 3D. That actually explains a lot. Because I was like, okay, this is kind of dumb. Even at the time, I was like the slow motion shit, the spears, like the angles and all that shit. I was like, it's kind of over the top and shit like that. And the blood, the CG blood everywhere, like the thousands of gallons. I was like, okay, whatever. And everybody's just like, oh, it's so fucking cool. And I was like, I didn't hate it, but it was like just whatever. And then fast forward, not even a year. And it's just, you see the fucking Spartan shield, Molten Labe, fucking all these tough guys wearing the Spartan shield, you know, and their body armor and shit like that. And I'm just like, okay, people are watching it. I was in the military. People were watching it all the fucking time. It's just this raging ball of testosterone. And I'm like, okay, so I've seen it many times, right? Not on my own volition, but like, just it's there, it's on, whatever, it's entertainment. And it got old, but I don't know, watching it again, I didn't really care for it then and didn't really see what the big fucking deal was, and that still stands today.
A couple of opening points that you guys have said, and I kind of want to chime in on. From what I remember from when it was for 3D, I believe it was because in the early days for the concept of 3D, I don't know for sure, and I kind of looked up, but I couldn't get a clear answer whether it was actually filmed for 3D. Like, for example, they're like Piranha 3D, you know, Piranha 3 and then 3D was made for 3D. Like, it only showed in 3D. I can't remember if 300 I believe 300 had two options. It was 3D and non-3D. And if you were cool and you had enough money because you paid a little bit more, why wouldn't you go see the spear popping out at you? Like that was the kind of thing. So I believe, if I remember correctly, that was the concept of its release. Was that, goddamn, sorry, Chipotle late at night. Was that, you know, you could have 3D or non-3D. But I believe the angles were like anything when, at that time, when it was meant for 3D, you could definitely tell cinematography was adjusted for the concept of a 3D shot. Like, for example, The Hobbit was meant for 3D and I think 64 frames per second, and it just made me nauseous, and I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, so, like, you know, that kind of stuff. Brian, go ahead.
Well, quickly chime in. That's the problem with 3D. You know, it's always been around since like the early 50s was when they really did it a lot, to like the mid 60s, and it doesn't have any replay value, you know, outside of a theater, or even in a theater it has to be set up for 3D, you know. So it's this fad that's like come around every 10-15 years in Hollywood, you know, just this like, oh look, it's coming at you now, you know. And then, oh, that sucks, it's strange, wow, that one gave me a headache. But we'll get a few years of cool movies and stuff, and then it will come up again. I love the films where they have the option for 3D and not 3D. I always will not go for 3D. I mean, unless it's like, I don't know, I'd see Jurassic Park in 3D or something. That would be interesting. But
have you noticed that's gone the way of the dodo? Like, that doesn't happen anymore.
What?
Right.
3D.
Well, that's what I mean. It's every 10 to 15 years. So we're in the period of time where that's not happening.
Well,
And
do
in
you
about
remember?
10 years, it will probably be a thing.
Do you remember? So this would have been maybe
Let me
2
see
to
when the
3
last one was
years.
made.
This would have been like 2 to 3 years after this. Do you remember the TVs they were selling at like Circuit City and Best Buy, where they were like 3D TVs,
Yep.
where you had to have special glasses?
Yeah.
And like I was like, God damn, like
Remember the curved TVs came out, and everybody would go to Costco and like stare at them.
Yeah, they still do. They still have those. But like the fads come and go. But it's interesting to see. It's like this is when I like to say that 300 is an exception, and I think because it is a movie that was made for both sides, and not a 3D only release. And I think that's why. God damn, sorry. I think that's why it is held up over the years after almost 20 years. Holy crap. Oh, that makes me feel old. Okay.
We're at 16.
only
That's not close
16.
enough.
Yeah, no. It's not legal, but
2006.
2007.
It's 18 years, almost 18 years. It's pretty fucking close enough
2007?
for me.
2007.
Okay, fine.
2023.
Okay,
16
okay.
years.
It's almost 17.
And that's still really long.
It's not 20 though.
No, honestly, Nate, when people say that was 20 years ago, then I'm like, okay, that's a little fucked. Anything below that, it's like, nah.
I mean, well, 20 years ago was 1990, so I mean,
20 years ago was
I'm
1990.
fucking with you. It's a joke that what you feel.
Oh,
like is
yeah,
20
yeah.
years
Oh,
ago
gotcha.
is what it actually is.
Yeah. like Halo 1 just turned 20 years old. Halo 2 will turn 20 years old in a year. I'm gonna feel so old because that's half my childhood right there. Anyway.
COD is 20 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it more? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the demo disc right here.
Wasn't
well,
it
the first
2001 or
one-
2002?
December
Yeah, I had the same one.
2003 PC Gamer Call of Duty demo disc.
I thought that was sooner than that.
Oh, that reminds me. Then we'll get back on subject, but I bought a Rush Hour VHS yesterday, and I watched it. It was great. It cheered me right up. I pull the tape out, and out pops a GameOfTheYear.com $10 off of Half-Life 1.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
99, dude. I aged so fast. I was like, oh my God. And then I put the tape in, and there was a trailer for GameOfTheYear.com.
Oh my God.
Half-Life 1, the best game to come out. Like, I was like, holy crap.
It's fucked.
I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, ow. Anyway, 300.
I've been so nostalgic for the early 2000s the last few months. It's been crazy.
There is so I guess talking about, to kind of circle back on a couple other things that like Brian said as well. It's like the cast is pretty phenomenal for what it is. There is a lot of early stars that go off to do a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm not even going to go into Gerard Butler because that's an obvious, but Michael Fassbender, the guy who plays the ambassador, he gets thrown into the well. He's had a lifetime of TV movies and all that stuff, like really well. He's in that Spartacus series too and all that stuff.
Lena Headey, she's in this one. You get to see her tits in this one.
Well, yeah. Well, she wasn't famous enough to get the mole cut off yet. So she's got it in there, yeah. But
Yeah.
no, it's just no, she didn't stunt double for this. It was real. So, yeah, mole, yeah. It was it even had the guy from The Wire, who is the politician. I can't remember his name, but talking about the actual like real life stuff within this movie, obviously, the Battle of Thermopylae is obviously something with ancient history and stuff like that. But the like one thing I learned when Sean gave me a bunch of podcasts to listen to kind of get somewhat smart about this, since he wasn't able to join, was the whole Leonidas kicking the guy into the well. That's actually a real thing, but it's not Leonidas. That was actually another king of Sparta, either just before or I believe they had two rulers at some time sometimes. I think it was before, if I remember correctly, in the timeline. And that happened like way before Leonidas. But it's interesting that they take real concepts from history and throw it all together. Again, it's a comic book movie, so of course they're going to loosely base it on stuff. But from what I understand about the history and stuff, and like the armor and all that stuff, like if we want to go into our own version of IMFDB for ancient history, is that they were not shirtless wearing fucking loincloths. Like, that wasn't the thing that they were doing. They weren't like, look at my greased up muscles and we will fight in the shade. Like, no, it's like, it's like, you know, I can't remember, but I remember they had some form of armor, and the swords are not, they don't have knuckle guards either.
Oh, those swords were so fucked up. They would use something.
They're hoplites. They're light Greek cavalry or infantry, you know?
Yeah, but those swords... Those swords would have been more of like a gladius style. I don't know the exact name of them, but they were not like a falchion like they were using with a fucking handguard. That's just made to look cool like a comic book.
It was bronze. Yeah. This is the This is because I also want to mention this is the oldest battle we've covered, or oldest section of history we've ever covered. This is 480 BC.
Yes.
Well, what are we going to jump to? The Romans next, and then to like Napoleon. So you know we got some gaps. So this is interesting to go back this far. I also wanted to say it's interesting how much, you know, so much of history is lost, but it's fascinating how much we still know from this far ago. And that might sound naive to some real historians, but it's like, it's pretty crazy, you know?
So I'll just talk about the weapons for a second and the armor and how we know that those exist. Is bronze one of my favorite fucking alloys, by the way, ever used for tools. Bronze preserves very, very well. It doesn't corrode at nearly the rate as like iron or steel or other kind of metals that they would use. And so that's how we know what a Spartan helmet looked like, what a Roman helmet looked like, because we'll find them in graves or whatever, and they'll have the exact shape and they're barely pitted, barely deformed. And excuse me. And so that's why there's swords that are still dug up every day in Europe and in the Mediterranean that are bronze, and the reason they only had bronze swords that were only this long and not like a fucking or like a rapier or a broadsword is because bronze, when it gets to a certain length, it'll start bending because it's still soft because it's just copper and tin. So they made them short and stout so they wouldn't bend. It's a very heavy metal too, very, very, very heavy and dense, and so that's why too, like in the movie, you could tell that the helmets, quote unquote, were like plastic props because they were flexing so much. It's like bronze doesn't flex until you get... All the
porous, too, in the shield. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I'm like, well, what, unless they sat there and, like, hammered it for, like, what do you call it? Like a decorative purpose? Mm-hmm. No, they're going to be relatively smooth unless they get dents and dings in them. And also, those fucking shields are heavy as shit. Yeah. So, but, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand the pitting and the helmets. It's like, no, they would have kept their shit in immaculate condition. That's part of being... a soldier back then is you keep your shit in as good a condition as you possibly can. If it gets dinged up and dented, so be it. But you're not going to be going out there with old pieces of shit that are flopping around like, you know, they're made out of plastic. So that was irritating in the prop department. It's like you can get bronze replica or something that's more rigid, at least a modern. If you don't want to use bronze, that's fine. But you get something that's more rigid so when he drops it, it doesn't flex like it's a fucking piece of rubber. But anyway, so the shields, that's concurrent with what I've seen from archaeological digs and what's in museums and all that shit. The swords, fuck no. That's straight out of comic books. It's a falchion with some decorative shit on there. And excuse me. Jesus, Nate's fucking burping. I'm coughing.
I'm sorry.
No, we just can't win tonight. But yeah, those swords were complete bullshit. As far as the little javelins or whatever the hell they had a name for them. I forgot. Not terrible from, again, what I've seen, but again, I'm far from an expert on this, but those were cool. And the way they used them for both thrusting and throwing, accurate to what I know, which is pretty cool. I like seeing that. Because like the phalanx, that was, I don't know if that was a Spartan thing or if that was, when did the phalanx come in?
That was a Greek thing for sure.
So it was just a Greek thing in general?
A Greek thing in general,
well, I think they used it at Marathon, which was 10 years before this.
So it was all the Greek nation states would have adopted this.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
well,
what is the nature of 1 second?
Yeah.
What is the nature of conflict? You know, I mean, the battles were fought in fields, usually over the course of a few hours. You know, traditionally, You just have armies mauling, or you'd have like nomadic tribes that were cavalry based or things. So like it took time for military theory to come into play, and the Greeks were so organized and everything. I'm very certain that they would have had hoplites by this point, because everything from this point just builds on. Because the Romans just copy the Greeks in every
for the
single
most part.
way,
Yep.
shape and form. And Alexander is Greek.
Yep.
I think 200 years after this, he's like 200s. But anyway, it's just interesting, to see how like you have to have order from chaos for this rabble, and Nate.
Well, I was just going to kind of chime in on some of the Spartan history to kind of support that claim. Is like, I think the tactics or the methods were there through everyone, but Sparta, particularly from what I've been like listening to and researching, is that they picked up the doctrine of heavy military, like massive recruitment and training. And that was what they based their whole entire civilization on, which is, you see it in the movie, they touch on it, I thought that was very interesting that even though this is a comic book movie, there still is lore within Sparta. Now, some of the other stuff is ridiculous, but there was a lot of, they adopted that whole mantra of recruit them while they're young, train them for one purpose, which is military. And, I think that definitely is the reason why, although the tactics might be the same throughout, because they kind of show the Athenians doing stuff, but they're more like maulers. They say in the movie like more like brawlers and stuff like that. My guess is that in real life the Athenians would have had the same kind of thing, but they would not have been as disciplined because, again, their whole mantra was not the same as Sparta. So it's very interesting to. By the way, I mentioned anyone, which we always do in this pod, is that, we always say that, unless we really know it, we always say, we're always learning, we're always researching.
Yep.
Please, everyone take a second if you want to learn more about this particular subject. The Rest is History podcast is a really good one to listen to. I did that this week, and I will not lie, I pulled a lot of my knowledge from that this week. But this episode, I think 82, and it's specifically on Sparta. And one of the things that they talked about, which I thought was really interesting, was that whole doctrine. But then they also talked about how there was a cheese arena where the Spartans were the only ones on record, at least around this point, to have an arena where you'd win cheese.
Oh, fuck yeah, I'd fight for cheese.
And I was like, holy
this
shit.
is Milwaukee!
Yeah.
Well, then you'd be fighting for beer, but...
Yeah. But it was just, I thought that was really interesting. And one of the things that they would do was they would fight, when they're training, was they fight each other for cheese. Like, that was a reward. And I was like...
delicacy to some places,
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, put it in the time period. It's like, you don't ever have cheese in your life, and you can win a block of cheese if you kill that guy. Fuck yeah, I'll kill you for some cheese.
Well,
to
be fair, the Greeks had cheese figured out pretty fucking well.
Right. But I'll wholeheartedly admit I learned that from The Rest is History, so everyone give that a watch if you want.
No, that's fucking awesome. That's a cool effect.
Let's talk cheeses here. Greek cheese or German cheese? What do you worth?
Well, they were funny. They opened the pod and they were just like, the guy's like, "Oh, you didn't go to the cheese arena?" He goes, "No, I didn't go to the cheese arena. There's too many meth heads there." That's funny.
The East Side one just hasn't been the same.
Yeah. The guy's like, "No, I went and ate a bunch of food." I was
So,
like, okay.
Little mind blower here. I might have said this before, but for all that are listening, if you think about it, cheese is just a loaf of milk.
Oh yeah. It's like, well, it'd be a huge intake of what?
Nothing.
It is a loaf of milk. Oh, is there a joke I missed here?
That is the joke. It's
okay.
cute.
Well, it makes it to me. I bought. It is. It's the same thing like how beer is liquid bread. It's the same thing.
Kind of. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it,
depending on the beer,
civilizations all throughout history use beer as bread, as a form of
it's a form of
nutrition and stuff like that.
Because the water's bad.
Well, I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
Don't drink the water in London until like 1800.
Well, there's a working hypothesis that people of European descent, because the water is particularly terrible in Europe, the water table and everything. there's a hypothesis that people of European descent have a genetic propensity to handle alcohol and become more like dependent on it and like addicted to it because for as long as people were in Europe, they figured out that if you mixed wine or beer with water, that you wouldn't get sick. And so people were pretty much walking around with a light buzz all day, every day. And it like became part of the DNA of European people.
Do you know why that stopped?
Why?
The Industrial Revolution. Because nobody gave a shit if you were tipsy all the fucking time, all day. Until
you worked
people
heavy
moved in
machinery.
cities and you worked at heavy machinery. Yeah, and that's seriously, it was a cultural shift.
Yeah.
Drinking was very common. You drink in the morning, you drink it during noon, because it's basically your water intake, your nutrition.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter, you're a banker, that's not good. But for most of society in medieval times or whatever, pre-industrial times, it's fine. But then when you start losing fingers and hands and children and employees, and it's like, well, you have to shift. So, but yeah, that was completely a thing.
And that was a thing in Rome and Greece as well, mixing wine. They did 1 part wine with 2 parts water. And that would make sure that it was a lot of the they didn't understand bacteria, of course, just the way we do it nowadays, but that they realized that they wouldn't get sick as often if they mixed that because the alcohol would kill a lot of the shit that was in there.
The Romans, they're trying to figure it out. Like they recently figured out the formula for Roman concrete. And they're trying to figure out the formula for Roman imperial wine. Because there was a version of the wine that was like, what's the right term? It was dehydrated. And it literally was like in little cakes. And they would just send it throughout the empire. Then you just had water, like you said. And then, pop, you got wine. And it's like this really insane cultural thing.
And it still maintain the alcohol in those cakes?
Apparently, yeah. But it's just one of these mysteries from the Roman Empire. They had these like little wine cakes that you would just, okay, you're good.
Well, it's like a water purification tablet, yeah.
Yeah, it's like what's that thing like for survival? Pervitin or the meat?
Pervitin is meth.
No, I know. Fucking no. What's the like the meat that you can preserve that like Native Americans
Pemmican.
Yeah, pemmican. It's like that, but no.
But I don't know how it would preserve the alcohol. But that's interesting though that because they had some shit figured out that we can't figure out today, and so did the Greeks. That's the thing is like when we talk about the Greeks, that's why they call it Greco-Roman because they're very similar because the Romans, like you said, just took a bunch of the technology. So I wonder if the Greeks had something like that. Okay, one thing. Okay, now that we're on the topic of that, I wanted to ask this: besides the one apple that Leonidas munches on for a couple of seconds, what the fuck were they eating to maintain that strength and endurance?
Dick. Persians.
They're just living on cum. Oh, it's good protein.
God damn it.
Sucking each other off.
I tried to get past that.
No, that's the thespian.
No, it's a medical question, Nathan. It's were they sucking each other off to get the little bit of protein, or what were they?
Come here, cum boy,
dude. Because the amount of effort and calories burned and all that shit exerted during that.
I tried, Sean.
Maybe Sean could answer that.
The battle only lasted like 3 days, but you're totally right. You need at least 5,000 calories a day to be doing what they're
minimum. Yeah, just to maintain.
Yeah.
At least 4 loads right there. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But
that's
I mean,
real
seriously,
problem with casualties.
That's the only time the king bent a knee.
Ow!
There you go.
Dang, got me weak in the knees.
Anyway,
but no, seriously, what the fuck did they eat? Like, just show something like they're around a camp or whatever when they're sitting around. Show guys eating in the back. Like, there's no fucking besides fish, I guess, but they're on a huge cliff. How the fuck and you got to bring fishing equipment? I mean, come on. But anyway, it's a comic book. I guess these guys are invincible.
While we're on that subject, it is very interesting. They did show it a little bit in the film. Yes, there was a big storm that was going on that destroyed part of the fleet. There was also a huge naval battle going on right offshore, or I think a few miles up or south along the coast while they were holding the pass. So there was a lot of naval activity going on right off to their side. And, this was 2,400 years ago.
Yeah.
Just about 2,450. And when you look at how things have changed, like the coastline has completely changed. It's receded, I think, 4 miles from where it was originally. And today there's a road that goes right along the original coastline. So you can actually look up photos and see how small and narrow the pass was. And in the film, they refer to it as the Hot Gates. And the reason they said that is because there's natural sulfur springs. In Greek mythology, this area was where Hades was. That there's a door
Hades.
that's somewhere, or Hades. There's a door somewhere that leads to Hades here because it's so hot and everything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. This is basically Greek hell in a way, and that's where they are. They're fighting, but it really is this really small pass. And traditionally, they were betrayed, and they were flanked, and there was also 6,500 of them. They were a very small portion of a very large army. And basically, why they got famous is because they became the what's it? God, I can't think of it. They were the delaying action to make sure the army survived. You know, to fight another day.
They were the French at fucking Dunkirk.
Yeah, or at El Ghazala in 1942.
Yeah,
you got to slow Rommel down. You have to have a speed bump. There's always going to be a sacrificial lamb, and you know, basically the problem was that if they didn't hold them off, then the Persian cavalry would have just run
decimated
down the fucking Greek army and their allies.
There was also you said 6,500, like 6,500 what?
Sorry,
you said
6,500 Greeks and Greek allied troops. There were 300 Spartans plus 6,200 other auxiliaries and troops that were there. And they were holding the main section, and there was one group that was holding this mountain little pass, and they were either paid off or they were pushed through, and nobody really knows. But after, I think, 2 days of them, you know, hitting frontal attacks forever, they finally went around them. And once that happened, that you know, you got to hold them off.
And they weren't betrayed by mutated Gollum.
Oh,
that nasty little slime fuck. Like,
so I do like the fact that this is told like a Greek myth. You know, kind of like Homer or that kind of stuff. You know, like I enjoy that. But why do you have to really go to the ends of the earth to do stupid shit? Like Xerxes being covered in fucking jewelry and stuff, and just like the really extravagant things that are just done to, I don't know.
They made him almost like into a demigod.
These people are from northern India, from Iran. They're from the Middle East. I believe the capital, it's the Achaemeniid Empire. That's the Persians. I believe their capital was Babylon. I hope I'm not fucking that up. But like it was very strange casting choices, I believe, with some of the.
Well, they also wouldn't have. I mean, like
much more African versus Middle Eastern.
I'm gonna dive down this now, I guess. I mean, obviously we can assume that there probably were they're probably in a massive empire, especially one that spans so long. Of course, you would have conscripts from different origins and different things, and people with different weapons and different cultures, and joining up and because they have to or they want to or whatever. I think we can very much assume there were not like pale vampire orcs with that know ninja skills, like
the
like
immortals?
we know like we know that's not true. This is a comic book, so but I think the concept of the again loosely based in facts, we can assume that there were conscripts from different parts of the empire. You know, Rome did the same thing as well. Even the British did it in medieval times. Like the French, like it's not unheard of. So I think that idea of it being in a comic book like theme is obviously, I think that is very interesting, and I thought that was a cool take. Again, there was a huge, like this was, I think we kind of touched on a little bit as well, but like this movie, you know, we're joking and all that stuff and talking about the history, but this was a big fucking push, at least in my generation. So this would have been, between maybe 15 and 25 years old at that time in 2006. Like there was a big culture push, and I think it was the really good push into cinema in terms of like, you know, we have this ancient warrior society that, you know, that lives on throughout all of our histories. I mean, like I guess we'll dive into it now, but it's like, you know, Sparta as an idea is very much plays an idealistic, push for the last 2,000 years of history of any culture and influence within normally the European side.
Yep.
The Germans pulled references from that. The Victorian British did that as well. Us as Americans have pulled that out.
How many
multiple
fucking
times.
high school football teams around the country are called the Spartans?
1 million.
Or Sparta?
No,
like the
2
Danish
million.
towns.
There's at least two in each county.
The Wolverines.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the Spartans. I mean, like, I think,
what about the Redskins?
right. putting goddamn Brad. The thing is that, the huge push of that whole, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but, like, even now, it's like you see Spartan helmets, mainly from this movie, from the Zack Snyder. It was Zack Snyder, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Zack Snyder's 300. It's like you see Spartan helmets everywhere on back of trucks and all this other shit. It's like, there's a general demographic that tends to put them on their trucks, but we'll just
They
say
like
that.
Punisher skulls as well.
Hell yeah, brother! Hold again.
They like they like Punisher skulls as well. Yeah, you're right. And that's fine. Like, to each his own. But it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see the influence of something like that. And again, it's like, if this movie was never made, I'm pretty sure the Spartans, in terms of the history books and influences, would still be what I talked about before this movie. But if you're talking about, like, cultural push, it's very interesting to see why people gravitated towards it. And
it's the typical David and Goliath thing. Everybody loves the story of the few holding off the many or battling the many. And this is an example that was historically accurate. Really quick, Brian, I'm just going to throw this out there.
Take your time. No worries.
The one thing that I'll say this about movies that are loosely based on real events that came with this culturally is that people think they take that movie and they adapt it, and that's what's in their head is what happened at the Battle of Thermopylae. And that, it irritates me with not just this film, but any film. I've said that multiple times on different films. There's nothing I can do about it. It is what it is, but it just bothers me. It always will, because again, it gets people like on your point is, yes, it gets people kind of aware that this battle did take place, just not in this way. But maybe you get a few people, a couple percent, that'll go and actually research this and go, oh, okay, well, that's what actually happened. So there is that little point.
Did you know that? This is the other thing. I was gonna make a joke, but I also was reminded of this because I was about to say his name during the podcast, and any kind of like things I listened to recently about this subject. Some of them say Leonidas, the way that the movie says it, which I know is probably wrong, and then the very much historical guys who have spent their life studying this stuff say Leonidas. He says it really weird. It's like Leonidas.
Are these people British though?
Yes, and I think that's why. But I also talked to my buddy who studies like ancient history like a ton, and he says that's the way you should say. But he's like, it's because the Greek stuff's different than our normal language. I guess in English it's Leonidas, but you say E's differently, and
yeah, for sure.
I was like, I forgot to call Sean today and yell and be like, tell me one thing. Is it this or this? Because I don't want to say it wrong.
Leonidas,
Leonidas. Yeah, it's like Leonidas or
he's that Greek. He's got a Greek deli on the corner.
Yeah,
he's got some great gyros.
Hi, I'm Wilford Brimley, and I have Leonidas.
The diabetes. Do you want diabetes, Leonidas?
And that's the thing is I kind of do like talking, riffing about things that I really don't have a fucking clue about. But the weaponry is about the only thing that I know a little bit more than surface level, but that's it.
To chime in on that, I living in Baltimore, we have the Walters Museum here, which is a fantastic art history museum. If anyone's local from Maryland, please go. It's amazing. They need more visitors. Anyway, they have a lot of ancient history stuff there, which is surprising. And they have a lot of Greek helmets.
Mm-hmm.
And Greek helmets at the time, they don't have any Spartan helmets, but the Greek helmets, like you can see where the influence of the illustrations, because again, comic book movie, comic book first, then movie adaptation. Everything from the movie adaptation is based off of the comic books. So the illustrator for the comic book had made a thing and they based off that. So, but you can see where it's based off of in history. Those shapes of the helmets, the shield designs, that kind of stuff. But they're not as ornate. They're not as flared. It's very interesting to see that stuff up close. And like you said, they're made out of bronze, Mike, so it doesn't really deteriorate. It just kind of pits and gets all like
it gets a
fucked up.
patina on it, but yeah, for it to actually break down is very uncommon. So that's what's cool about using bronze that's why a lot of statues are made out of bronze. Because it can handle the elements very well. And if it starts getting a patina on it, you can just wipe it off. So
I'll say it like this. It's interesting to see, as a cinematic standpoint, and I think this is also the big draw of this movie as well, is a comic book being live action. Because at the time, we haven't hit the Marvel stuff yet. We haven't hit this adaptation.
Pre-Iron Man.
This is pre-Iron Man. And I think the nerds, I'll say it, fucking nerds, who read the comic books and saw the adaptation of it, saw how close it was to the actual comic book.
There you go. Yep.
I think that is a big feat. It also is you have feats of impressive nature in this movie, and also unprecedented volume of feats and things happening, like Spartans stacking Persian bodies to make a wall. I know that's a real thing. I know you can do that.
Yep.
But you could have done it, et cetera, is the one thing. But
it's a little bit of a health hazard,
right?
But
arrows blocking out the yeah. Oh, this guy shit on my brick. Fuck. Like blocking out the sky full of arrows. Like that is a real thing that has been documented.
That's been recorded.
Yes.
By many different
many
parts
different
of the world,
different times.
Yep.
I'm not saying that's impossible.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I what I'm trying to say is that the sheet, like for example, the arrows blocking out the sun, we never really saw the volume of that because before this was more of a practical effects. This is when CG's just getting good enough, and CG can kind of be not so real because it's a comic book adaptation, so it can kind of be a little different. So you have that ability to flex the visual effects. But I think the other thing is that's really interesting about this that I thoroughly enjoy still, even though it's bullshit, is a phalanx with shields completely blocking, with pushing back the enemy, stabbing, and going again. And hearing that repetition, hearing that communication, hearing that teamwork in a modern-like cinema adaptation is really interesting because at this point in 06, and even almost now, we really don't see very many adaptations of that. In TV shows like Last Kingdom, Vikings, you do see that. But because it's similar with shield walls and stuff for the Vikings. But what I'm trying to say is that the adaptation on the modern film to see that actually being played out in fucking high production is really, really cool. Like, I always send you guys when we're always like going out, we're trying to get something done. I send you guys that 300 clip all the time. Because it's that like, the no prisoners, no mercy, like I send that for a joke, but like it's really cool to see that in that moment. And I think I think this whole movie's very impressive in that sense. And then you also have it, taking images from the comic book, like, literally freeze frame, like the whole movie poster that Brian sent to us this morning or yesterday, that's straight out of the comic book as a slide, as a panel. Yeah, straight out. It's them hacking the Persians into the ocean, and it was
They're
red,
thirsty.
black, and like that's all from the comic book. So there's a lot of comic book adaptation to it. So what I'm trying to say is that even though this movie is a comic book, I do feel like it has its own place in cinema in its own adaptation of what it is, because I don't think we've ever seen anything like that, because what we've gotten past that in 08 and the rest of the fucking last 15 years has been comic books, movies, but it's Marvel, and they're fine. I'm a Marvel fan. Well, not. I stopped caring about 5 years ago, but you get my point. It's like that is it's cool and all, but if you said like if you said like you want to see a comic book adaptation, I probably would pick 300 for most of them, because it's not been beaten into my brain for the last 15 years.
Yeah, there you go. And how many times can you make a fucking superhero movie?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
And I won't go down that rant because I could talk about.
no, but like that's relevant to what
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
said
yeah,
about
yeah.
300 being a little
Yeah.
bit different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, too bad Mike A's not here. He'd fucking tell me I'm wrong at all, because he hates comic book adaptations. But I don't know. My long rant over. I think cinematically it does have a place, and I think it does have a spot. However, blanket statement to everything I just said. It is not a real fucking movie. Don't quote it as real history, please, for the love of God, because I've had multiple people tell me this. So, there you go.
That's
Again, it's a gateway to do your own research, like you said, Mike.
And I think you said pretty much everything. Yeah.
Which I had a lot of fun doing. It was very, interesting to jump into this because I knew so little about it, or just knew like the top level glance. But even as I think about it, like there was even a documentary on History Channel when they used to make documentaries about stuff on that channel about Thermopylae when this film came out, because it was that big. Like it forced them to buy into the narrative to make a documentary, multiple actually, about.
And they were dying as a channel as well. So
that was just at the tail. That was before Ancient Aliens, before Hidden Hitler's.
Finding Bigfoot was not big? What?
Jesus. Oak Island.
All that swamp people.
Ice Road Truckers.
Oh my God, I remember that. I watched that, though. It was interesting.
Deadliest Catch was better.
Yeah, much.
Remember that logging show they used to have?
Yes, I do.
They all used to fight each other.
It was the logging show. I can't remember what it was called. But
it was like that one father and son.
Oh! That was so fucking fake.
But it was like,
what are you talking about, Jim Bob?
Oh, my dad is dead now. I miss him so much. Yeah, really. It's like fucking American choppers, but they're logging. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, Pawn Stars, fucking all that shit came out. It was like,
Pawn Stars. Pawn Stars is interesting because you at least get to see like an artifact that they overpay or destroy or whatever. But like that was at least fun to see. What had no fucking existence in the world was Ice Road Truckers, Gold, something else, and just and Ancient Aliens, and Hitler is a duck person. I don't know, just all that shit. It's like
they went hunting for Hitler in Argentina.
I wanna watch old ass documentaries I can't find anywhere, or I want to watch archival footage like I was doing for the last 15 years of my life. Why are you changing everything?
There's like a few waves of it though, because like in the early 2000s, I feel like the History Channel was like very grounded. Like let's say,
it's fucking
pre 2008, because kind of like I think we could all agree that like
05 they were starting to go. But
I'm saying like between
you had the military channel on the side, picking them up. But then they went the way of the dodo like in 08. So
you have like different eras. I really define one like from 9/11 to like let's say Obama or the financial crash at the end of 08. Like that was like a vibe. And in that time, History Channel was kind of like a channel. In the 90s, they made some crazy shit like Sex and the Swastika and some other really strange
I really want to I got to find that.
I will find it for you. I've seen it before.
I'm going to try to...
That shit came on late at night because I'd stay up and watch it to try and look for tits, but it didn't happen.
There was like a whole series. That was one name of an episode and like a very long, was Hitler a Jewish assassin?
I found Sex and the Swastika Uncensored posted 2 years ago.
There you go. But like,
I'll put it in the links down below.
And then the world explodes in 08 financially and everything, and then Ancient Aliens. You get way off the ball conspiracy, but in this time, they actually did make stuff. Like Battlefield 360 came out.
History Channel made a ton of Civil War games.
Tales of the Gun, dude. Tales of the Gun.
Again, 90s stuff. What was that on originally? Fucking
History Channel.
Which one?
No, Tales of the Gun was History Channel.
Was it History Channel? What was the shooting channel that was back then? I forget.
Top Shot.
Was it Top Shot?
Top Shot was the shooting competition.
No, that was the show. But there was like an outdoor channel that used to play Top Gun.
It was called the Outdoor Channel.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, literally, because I caught my parents banging when they were watching. They said they were watching.
Shout out.
You and me, baby, nothing but mammals.
Bad touch.
But yeah, fucking So nostalgic for this shit. But
Anyway, they used to have cool shit on about like
15 years ago.
Thermopylae
And then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
did. But
Coming back around.
it was such a cultural thing, though, that it forced a network to make a documentary about it. You know, it's like that doesn't really happen today. Like, does the History Channel going to make something about Oppenheimer? No. And this film is just as big, if not bigger, culturally than Oppenheimer today. I think that's a really good comparison, actually.
Oppenheimer is a fucking letdown. Yeah, 300 was
You can
like
say what you
everybody
want
loved
about,
that.
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, as big as it was advertised and like in your face, like, you know, there's not
True.
you know,
Yes.
The Joker was
Yeah.
big. There were other things, but like I really feel like, you know, this was a cultural. Barbenheimer is a thing that people will always talk about. You know, just like 300.
Yeah.
So, or like when Halo 3 came out, or
Yeah. Halo 3 awful.
What?
No, but like we were talking about earlier, like this culturally definitely changed and not created, but just kind of enhanced a certain demographic. Or no, it did create it. It really did.
It did create
wannabe,
it. It didn't. It 100% created
this
it.
wannabe badass. I'm gonna listen to Five Finger Death Punch. I'm gonna fucking crank that shit. Put a fucking a Spartan helmet on my plate carrier. I'm gonna get it tattooed on my chest. Put it on my truck. Mole on lab. You know, moldy labia. That shit. Come and take it. It's like, yeah, you know, we're gonna fight the government like the fucking Spartans fought the Persian. No, you're not. Shut up. And it's still prevalent to this day. Like there's still Spartan shields on everything. Like Nathan was saying, it's like
It's on
good
every
God.
truck
So-
in my county. Yeah.
Oh fuck yeah! And every plate carrier. That helmet that I sent you on the chat, that's a Corinthian helmet. That's bronze, and that's the condition they're gonna find these fucking things in 2,000 plus years later.
That's like the ones at the Walter Art Museum.
it's amazing.
Yep.
So I found one shield. It's a Spartan shield that was captured in battle by an enemy of Sparta and brought back to some palace as a war trophy. And they wrote on the front of it, like, taken at the Battle of whatever in 425. And it hung in this hall for 600 years. And thank God it still survives, but it's a bronze shield and everything. And it's just insane. You know, it's like that's from a Spartan that was killed in battle. And, you know, brought
Don't
back.
those things weigh? I think they weigh like 50-ish pounds.
I can only imagine. I played around with like the Roman shields, and they're pretty heavy and bulky, and they're not bronze. Fucking like,
Right. What did they make the Roman ones out of? I forgot.
I honestly have no idea.
Sean would know, obviously, but I think
Yeah,
it was.
fucking
I think it
Christ.
was wood.
I think there was a mix. I've seen the only real shield left. It's in a museum near me.
Speaking on
They're made of wood.
on they're made of wood. I figured, yeah.
Wood's still fucking heavy.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
There might have been a coloring with these shields. Nobody knows. That's the thing. You know, we only have a very
Right, because the paint would come off.
all of the monuments were painted beautifully with everything.
Exactly.
And then there's this thing called the Dark Ages. And, you know, like all the Roman columns and stuff were gilded with fucking copper and silver. And it was just like amazing. And then all that shit was ripped out. There are some monuments where the paint has existed enough where there have been reconstructions. And it's like night and day. Like, you know,
Yeah, like all those marble statues, like David.
Yeah.
They think that was painted.
Yep. I think they said he had like a red tunic on or something originally. But it's,
Yeah, and
you know, we only have the bones of the past. That's the problem.
at least we have the bones.
Oh, thank God. Well, that's why it's just amazing that we know so much. Like, this was so long ago. And, like, that you can read these accounts. Because for so long, people thought that Homer was just lying. And then they found Troy.
Oh,
And
right.
it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, exactly,
Like, okay,
yeah.
well, maybe this isn't just some fucking crackpot writing about things 400 years after they happened. Like, so it's just amazing that we have enough of it. But we're missing the frills, in lieu of a better term. You know, like,
Sure.
we only get
Yep.
the basic. And, like,
We've got the round edges. it's all rounded off.
Like
Yeah.
all history, you lose 99% of it within a generation or two, you know, because it's always orally spread, and it's usually, you know, there's some probably really awesome Battle of the Bulge stories that have been wasted on stepwives, or like people that just don't care, like, you know, Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Well, yeah,
or,
exactly.
Or all this crazy shit, you know. So all these things are just forgotten over time, and that's like even with the Second World War. Like that's why I love to read memoirs and stuff, because like with reenactors, they'll go into the field. Like, oh my God, that fucking sucked. My feet froze and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, well, yeah, it sucked for those guys too, but they did this. They ripped, you know, fucking their K-Rats apart and made insoles out of them, and they did that. And it's like the little things that humans do to make their lives better. And that's just what you don't get with the basic bare facts, Henson,
No, and that's the thing too is
that's a great
Yeah,
obelisk. But back then, oh my God, that's a magnificent painted piece of art.
fucking insane.
Oh,
Yeah.
mind melting. So,
And what's interesting is like only in the really big civilizations that are actually quite recent, do people did people kind of understand the need for written history and putting down what year it was at their whatever calendar they used to say, hey, this is what happened on this date. So and so did this, so and so stole this from somebody, and then they had to go to court and all that shit, and whatever. Just people started writing things down. Unfortunately, there were only so many literate people, so many scholars who could write and read, that it's so limited. Like nowadays, we can all sit there and write something. All of us are literate. We can read and write something. Or I'm sorry, write something down, and then it's there until it gets destroyed or lost or whatever. Back then, it's like, well, you've got a few people who can do that. What are the odds that A, they can get everything, and B, that shit's going to get lost or destroyed?
the very earliest forms of writing and language they've found in caves, and they're pretty sure that they have to deal with the delineations of months and seasons and when certain things happen, so that people can look at things and they can teach further generations to be like, when the moon is here, this animal will come out.
Yeah.
And that animal will come out. And that eventually led to transactions. How do I, exchange this with you? And thus, that's how things evolve. And it's how you have to have it. It has to be just a basic form of civilization.
Well, and it's interesting too, is we don't know how, when we were growing up, we were always taught that mankind's only been around for 50,000 years. That's it. That's the fucking gold standard. And now they're finding that there's evidence of human beings, not Neanderthals, not whatever, human beings 1.5 million years back. And it's like, okay, the further back you go, the less we fucking know, obviously, because of what you just said. But you would think that these civilizations, if people were using tools in a very sophisticated manner 1.5 million years ago, you'd think that somebody at some point in one of these big civilizations that rose and fell would have written down more history than what we actually, or maybe we just don't know how to find it or got destroyed or whatever. But you'd think that somebody would have figured that out along the way. So we're still learning. Like human beings, 1.5 million years is still nothing, but like, compared to the earth and everything, but we just don't know. And then, like you said, every fucking generation, more and more gets lost. So imagine that far back, and even 2,400 years ago in Greece, they were good at recording what they could, and we still don't fucking know.
What's amazing is that, certain forms of citations have been set up for thousands of years. So there are books from ancient Greece that have citations to works that don't exist anymore. Because this guy was citing a dude, and that's the only thing we have from that dude, is that this guy was like, I like what he's saying. Yeah. And so this guy said that. Fuck yeah. And it's like, well, if only. There's only one ancient library left in the world that we have access to, and it's the library at Herculaneum. It was burned and destroyed in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. But all of the tablets were destroyed in a way where they're now figuring out how to scan them and peel them out digitally and read them. And there's 40,000 of them. They've been able to decode like 300, and it's already changed a bit of history. So it'd be amazing to see what's in that, because the guy that was there was this famous rich dude he only collected scribes. Like, it was a big thing. Like, he's just a collector, and he's like, this is cool works. And it was like only like scientific works or something. It was a very specific field, because like most collectors are, you want to collect this specific thing.
Yep.
So over time, it'd be amazing to see what will come out of that. But like, like the joke of the library at Alexandria, like, what was in there that was lost? Or the library at Timbuktu that was recently burned down fucking 10 years ago. There were tons of shit in there that was never scanned or actually looked at. So that's the thing. We're always constantly, losing it. And I had something else to say, but totally forgot it. Nate?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Library of Alexandria, and then we will get back. But I think one thing I'm very concerned about, just as a avid historian and stuff like that, is the loss of information if the internet still is a thing 10 years from now, in terms of being being made the primary. Sorry, I'm fucking up my words. The primary source of documentation and recording. I am terrified that, 50, 100 years, even 200 years from now, stuff will be physically turned to digital, and then for some weird event in history, human or natural or whatever, I'm worried that that's all going to be lost like another great library. That is my concern in that sense, because I'm not talking about just my life on Earth, my time on Earth being lost, but just I'm more worried about humans going to more of a digital way of not keeping the physical essence anymore.
Really quick, Brian. The good thing about having the internet is multiple people can fucking print that shit out and put it in different places in the world in huge fucking libraries.
I'm not downplaying that.
And that's being done.
Right.
That's being done.
Which is it's the internet's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is the distribution of information. However, I am very worried about physical media being lost to time. Thankfully, there seems to be a revival, but yeah, Brian.
The way the society moves forward is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're always going to have this push and pull where you're going to lose things, in that. And I'm totally forgetting my point today. I don't know what the fuck it is with the weather or something. We're all
we're fighting a cold front right now, and Brian and I are nursing headaches. So yeah.
But fuck.
You've crossed. You're almost to 30, dude. I'm sorry. This is
I think it's
happens.
Just the day.
Your mind just rots from the inside out. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, this is old for ancient times. I should be statesman.
Yeah, we should be dead by this point. Yeah. I was gonna chime in on, before we got on that little tidbit, but I was gonna chime in on kind of because I wanted to find out more about Sparta in general, and I learned, actually, which is why we wanted to do this pod in the first place, is I wanted to learn more things about stuff I didn't know. And I learned that Sparta pretty much, it had this, it fought the Persians, and it went after the Athenians, and I think they lost to the Athenians pretty hard. They got by the Thespians and the Athenians, I think together, they took out Sparta. Don't quote me on this, but it's what I remember vaguely. And then I think Sparta kind of turned into like a shadow of its former self, and then eventually Sparta was swallowed by the Roman Empire.
As all of Greece was, yeah.
Yeah. And
was it part of Alexander's empire as well? I think it was.
I think so. I'm not sure. This is when Sean would be great, because he could probably know it. But, he says he's not an expert, but he can be like, oh, that's fucking stupid.
Well, let me tell Sean's story as he rolls his eyes, because I know he listens to this. We went and saw Napoleon recently, and he's a so-called not expert, and we're watching it, and every 5 minutes I saw his hand fly up in the air. Good old Italian investigation or conversation. And I'm just like, oh, this is going to be fun. So after the fact, I'm talking to him and stuff. And he's like, I can't fucking believe it. And I'm like, what? He goes, told Rome was fucking not that fat. He had a disease and he was sick and he's like this. And I'm like, Sean, I thought you were an expert. I was like, well, I'm not. But I'm like, you knew the man had this incredible condition. This very, I don't know. It was pretty funny. For a man that says he doesn't know anything, you happen to know a lot.
Yeah, you want me to fucking hold your hand?
Yeah, fuck it. No, Saj.
No.
But this is an interesting movie. I don't know. I expected it, like I said earlier, to be a hunk of horrible shit, but it's a very interesting historical landmark. I think culturally,
it's as that commenter said, it's a product of its time.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
This one will be remembered like Superbad was remembered, or Napoleon Dynamite's remembered. Just like it's revered in a way. Not saying it's good, but it's just
freaking idiot. Stupid.
Some films stand out in for decades and generations, and this is definitely one of them. It's like,
Big Lebowski. There we go.
No, not that. I was gonna say what's the one about the detention, the group of kids that had to go in the
Breakfast Club.
Yeah, it's like the Breakfast Club or things like that. Like some movies that are just always remembered. So
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, it's like it's a lot of people's cup of tea. That's the thing. Is like a lot of people love that. Again, the David and Goliath, the underdog, the few just kicking ass against the many, the survive or not survival story, but like the triumph basically over the superior odd. And it's like people love that shit. People are always gonna love that shit, especially when it's got Gerard Butler and painted abs.
And it's shot in such a way too, where it's engrossing. Like you touched on earlier, Nate. Like the first attack where they push forward and the counterattack, I love the way that's shot from the side. I think that's really cool, like the progression, and everything.
No music until they're pushing them back. By the way,
Yeah,
like it's pure sound effects of just. And again, it kind of reminds me of the epics we had in the '90s, where the big scale medieval epics.
like
Like
there's Joan of Arc, I know, but
there's Joan of Arc. There's a couple others. Robin Hood had a lot of combat in that sense. The Kevin Costner one.
Braveheart.
Like the point is that there was a lot of you have those mass number films, and those kind of died away in the 2000s, and then you have this resurgence of the technology's catching up to make mass volumes look real enough to then have that mass volume again. And that is something to kind of think
like
about.
Game of Thrones.
Well, because this whole, I don't know if you guys obviously, I don't know, maybe you did. I just remember a lot behind the scenes, but like the floor is all real. Like the floor it's all stage. It's all stage acting. There's no real life shooting in this movie. Or no on the set locations.
You can tell by the light.
Well, yeah, it's all stage, and it's all like real rock stage or floor texture stage. The background is blue, completely blue, because they wanted that that kind of comic book fake facade sunsets and Sin City era. Where Sin City is all blue screen, but this was essence of real stuff and like real stuff in the shoot, but then the background's all fake.
It reminded me of that Death Race movie too from Tarantino from around this time.
Yeah,
like Death Race 3000.
Yeah,
or even Judge Dredd. It came out like in the mid.
Are you talking about the Carl Urban one?
Yes.
2014. Yeah, that movie's
Oh,
really
that's
good.
A little later. Yeah, but you know what I mean though. It's like
yeah.
That one is better at it, but it was like this aesthetic that you really saw. Soundstage like blue screen.
Before I went on that last thought, there was you guys were talking about the types of people it hit, and I think it hit a couple groups. It was teenagers, history nerds, comic book nerds, and girls who like painted abs.
Yep.
Because have you guys ever seen that 5-second film? 5-second film clip where it's like the Twilight test screening.
No.
Have you ever seen that? This guy, it's literally, they were known for having literally 5-second films on YouTube. And it literally was like, it had like a black screen that said test film of Twilight. And it literally was a guy in a lab coat who puts his hand on a theater seat and just goes, and then he goes, it's good, movie's good. And that's all I think. That's what the 300's about for some of them. So anyway, that's a shot back on old school YouTube when you were allowed to fucking do shit like that.
Right. The Wild West.
Yeah. The internet of our youth.
Yeah, there's the reason we're all fucked up.
Yeah, lively.
No, I do not want to see. Oh, look, an orange jumpsuit. Oh.
What happens when you throw a chainsaw at someone? Oh, no.
What happens when you have a deer hunting knife in the Middle East?
Oh, this is
weird.
What happens when you put a knife in your hoodie pocket and forget it's in there and reach for something in the cabinets?
Why is there a jar on the floor?
Yeah, that was... Oh, fuck. You ever seen eel soup?
We've gone down this rabbit hole, and that was the very first thing you asked me last time, and I said no, and I still don't want to know what eel soup is because it just sounds so bad.
You got to watch it.
Ugh.
I watched it.
Because then you introduced me to the Sissy of Fremont, and then I fucking lose my mind.
The Sissy of Fremont? That's not traumatic. That's fucking awesome.
I don't know.
Hi.
Stop. I've erased him from my mind, and now you just shot back into it. like Xerxes, like a Xerxes nightmare. Just
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, the Sissy of Fremont's quality.
That'd be a great short, by the way. You ever see eel soup? I got Baileys in my shoe.
You ever been to a club where people wee on each other? You want to see my downstairs mix-up?
I'm gonna hurt you.
I'm gonna hurt you. Yes, sir.
Oh Christ!
Fucking
video.
awful.
Anyway, this is normally what happens when we have ancient history and also just like
It's 300.
Like we go around. Yeah, it's 300. Yeah,
It's a comic book that they made into an ancient film. You know, it's just
Oh, speaking of that, another weapon in the film, the naphtha.
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that and how they.
That's our
fucked
one.
that
That's
up.
like our one modern weapon in this whole entire film. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like the way back predecessor to a fucking hand grenade, which I don't know if naphtha came later or I think they had it at this point. Anyway, it was just basically like a fucking napalm. It was like tar, it was pitch and whatever else that was lit on fire. And it didn't explode, but it burned.
Mm-hmm.
And they were they put them in like a ceramic pot and they'd light the wick and then fucking chuck it. And it would just create fire, like just a place you couldn't go because it was just sticky and burning. It did not explode with sparks and shit like that, like this thing. Like a fucking Chinese firework factory went up, you know? Like, God, that was stupid. It's like, why don't you just show actual fire, like just melty shit everywhere that people are slipping and falling into it, and, you know?
remember they always put a stack of about 400 of them in one place,
So that the one
about
rolls,
200 meters behind the line. You know, so
Yeah, and all the 5 naphtha throwers have 5,000 of these fucking
and they're
things.
guarded. You know,
Yeah. Fucking stupid.
and, well, the annoying thing though is like all this is based in reality, and the reality is way cooler than what they show. Like there were real immortals, and they looked fucking awesome for their time. They don't look like, you know, again, Sin City criminals, but they look really fucking cool. You know? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need a fucking Yakuza gang. You're in Greece. You know, like, it's like Crazy 88, but like, you know.
Yeah, but Xerxes went to Japan to get these guys special.
Yeah, I've read as a samurai. Yeah. Is that they also find the fucking Willy Wonka there, or the fucking
Willy Wonka? What the
one
fuck
of those things in Willy Wonka? The fucking
Oompa Loompa?
Yeah,
Oompa
you find the
Loompas?
fucking Oompa Loompas there too. What is
They found a rhinoceros somewhere.
Yeah, fucking the immortals and the chrome-faced immortals and the Oompa Loompas are a tribe. Who would have guessed? You know.
Yeah, the rhino too came as a package deal.
Oh yeah, so let's talk about that. Like, did they actually bring war animals to that theater? I don't know. Like, it's famously that Hannibal brought war elephants to Rome. That's true. He did bring elephants through the Alps, and most of them died. The war rhino.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question I had.
The one javelin through the eye, and he just knows that it's gonna die, so he doesn't fucking move. And this fucking 10-ton thing is
Mike, that's your cool guys don't look at explosion moment.
okay.
I mean, you got to have it in a movie.
Yeah, I suppose.
And then you actually have cool guy doesn't look at an explosion because he's covering it with his shield.
All the frag with all the ceramic and shit.
Yeah.
Also, those elephants. There's not an elephant in the world that's that fucking big. Just throwing that out there.
There's also not subhuman orc men either, but I know what you mean.
You don't know that.
I don't.
There were apparently no war animals in this campaign. So, just going to throw that out there.
There were horses.
Yes. Okay. Well, you know, that's a traditional war animal. I think that goes without mentioning.
Haven't you ever heard the song Thunder Horse?
No,
That was inspired from this.
Really?
None of you watched Metalocalypse. I can fucking tell that right now.
Oh no, I've watched a few of the episodes. I haven't seen all of it, but
Yeah, see,
I haven't seen
they
it
reference
forever, so I don't
a
remember.
town that I basically work in that show, Danbury, Connecticut.
Danbury. There's a
Like-
Danbury near me too.
Well, what's funny is they're like fucking. They're in Norway. They're like, this fucking place is so soft. Fucking, this place is even softer than Danbury, Connecticut. So I guess they had somebody that lived there because it's such a random fucking call out.
Yeah, I mean that's really. I could just sit here and bitch about the fucking culture that was born out of it, but that's really That's all I think of when I think of 300. I just think of that demographic, and it's just
Yeah. What I was gonna say was like I think it's a cool movie to have on maybe once every 5 years. Just to be my just well for me.
yeah. You enjoy your once every 5 years 300.
I enjoy something that play. I enjoy a lot of shitty movies
Yeah,
for for I like how you said that. I enjoy a lot of shitty movies, even on an old outdated format recently. To enjoy, kind of running down the road of nostalgia, but also the fact that, each shitty film does have a unique contribution to cinema history and influence and influence.
yes,
And I think that is something to really chime in on, coming right off of Pearl Harbor, where I said the same thing. However, that's a 2, and I'll never watch that again. But I think this film has a good reason to occasionally watch it. But I wouldn't say like watch it for historical relevance. That's not a word. What the word am I looking for?
relevance.
Historical relevance. Thank you. I combined the 2 words.
You did.
Brian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's like this movie brings me to a time and place, into that late aughts. And
I think that's why I gravitate.
Yeah,
to
and
it
it's
as
like
well.
I don't see myself seeking this out in the future. Maybe for the hell of it with friends. If it's on TV, if I even have TV, like I'll catch it. But I don't know. Like it just, I'm glad to have watched it. I'm glad it exists. It's interesting, But yeah, it's. I think for the people that live through it, because it was so big, it's a cultural event.
Yeah,
And it's just like it's something, It's not like American Sniper where it's like, oh, that's just a bad movie. It's like, oh, the 300 is like this is an event. It's like a Home Alone or something like that, or like.
Well, the one thing I forgot to chime in on in terms of cinema, this is the very first movie that captivated slow motion.
yeah.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the very first, if not the first, major cultural. I'm going to stay away from cultural. I mean, it is, but I'm not going to use it like that anymore. It is. It is one of the forefront movies to use slow mo in the mid-aughts because the technology was just getting good enough for it to look good, and not be this staggering kind of thing.
The Matrix.
And they combined it right. Yeah, like the Matrix used slow motion, but they used slow motion not in its truest form. It was a combination of still shots stitched together because the technology wasn't there for high speed filmography at that point. And so that's the thing. It's like that this movie played a huge point in propelling that. Because after this movie, what did you get? You just got action hero slow motion in true high speed, high frame rate slow motion.
Well, it just
for the next 10, 15 years.
It's just funny that this comes out right before Iron Man, and really that, like you said, the whole thing takes over. So it's really the end or the beginning, if you want to look at certain ways in era. And transitions always happen a few years before the end of a decade. You always have the things that will take over in the beginning, like 4 or 5 years out. So that makes sense for 07 to thus, 08, 09, 12, just how everything spiraled off itself.
I think we're at an age where Marvel is declining. And I think hopefully we'll start seeing some new innovation of stuff. I don't want Marvel to be gone because I do think it has its time and its place. But it needs to rethink itself as most of the world needs to.
We're at a really big crossroads for media, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it survives. The most amount of people are making content than ever before, but at the same time, they're making the least amount of movies they ever made before. Their whole movie demographics, they don't make anymore. It just don't exist. Like, your middle-aged adult thriller or like smart film, Now everything, they have to have a reason to go see it. It has to be huge and bombastic and insane and blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
Or a series.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that makes money is like a remake, a reboot, or something crazy bombastic. There's nobody wants to gamble anymore, especially with streaming and there's no VHS sales or DVD sales, and there's a million things that go into it. But media is in a real transition right now. Half of the world gets its information from YouTube, basically. So how do you fight that? How do you monetize that? How do you go forward with that? I think it's a good thing. I watched every single documentary I've watched that I love, I've watched for free. So it's like, we just live in a very interesting time. And if people aren't going to pay for it, then who's going to fund it to get it made? So the entry cost is so low, but the distribution cost is so high. It's very interesting, but strange times. I think, is it time?
It is time.
Yeah.
I would like to take a moment, though, to thank our newest Patreon. And if you guys didn't know, we actually do have a Patreon. But thank you so much, Hero Brian Warnes, for your monthly contribution. And also, I would like to say the sticker question for this episode. Nate will actually include it this week, unlike the Covenant.
I clued it last week. By the way, if you contribute to Patreon, we can help replace Mike A's fucking microphone that plagues me every goddamn week.
I really like this.
Mike A, wow, you joined. Wow.
Jeez, hey.
Yeah.
Everything going better, buddy?
He's speaking from the broken antenna on his moon base.
Yeah.
But this week's question has to deal with this movie. Particularly one character from this film. Which cast member from this film was also in Band of Brothers? So, the first person to message Instagram or Facebook with that answer will get a sticker. Anyway, so yes, guys, I think it is time for final thoughts. So, we have been surrounded. The Persians are on all sides. This is the end. Who would like to go first?
We've been betrayed by a sex gremlin.
Before we get porcupined, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Sex gremlin, Jesus Christ.
The guy from Notre Dame was a real asshole,
Yeah.
Now I fucking know why they kept him in the church. Jeez. You killed Leonidas.
Leonidas? Okay.
Leonidas.
Yeah.
Leonidas. Anyway, all right, I'll fuck this pig. Okay, yeah, I've said most of the things that I wanted to say, and having seen it shortly after it first came out and everything compared to nowadays, it still holds the same. It hasn't gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better. It's the same. So, I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's pretty neutral. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't really learn anything or analyze anything that I hadn't before, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Again, the culture that came out of it, luckily it sort of died down, but it's still fucking there. And that is irritating, but whatever. Like the history part of it, the fact that they brought up a battle that actually did happen, that people can go research, it's cool. It was shot not in the style that I liked. That's probably why I didn't like it that much. I don't like that whole Sin City style. It's just fucking irritating. But a lot of people do like it, and that's what matters. So as far as cinematics, the history, the comic book adaptation, all that stuff considered, and factoring in the fucking wannabe hardcore culture, it's entertaining. So I'll give this a solid 6.2 out of 10. Nathan.
I just stuck a Mike and Ike in my mouth.
I know, that's why if you hadn't been eating,
you stuck
I would've
Mike and Ike
chosen
in
Brian.
your mouth at the same time. Like,
we were talking about
pretty gay.
sucking each other off for protein earlier.
Yeah, Mike and Ike. Yeah, I don't think that's a Greek name.
Put an S on the end of it. It will be Micus and Icus.
Damn it!
Yeah,
I was about to say that.
Put an S on the end of anything. It's Greek.
I know you loved yogurt, but
I learned just yesterday. That's how the Murloc sound came from World of Warcraft. It was a guy gargling yogurt. And that fucking made me laugh so hard. I don't know why. Anyway, there's your video game history for the day. So yeah, I mean, like, this is hard because, in my head, I technically don't see this as a war movie. I see this as a comic book adaptation. But it is loosely based on real ancient history of human history, and so I feel like it needs to be bracketed in there. Plus, if I see one more, do you like this movie this movie called 300 on the war movie forums, again, I'm gonna lose my absolute mind. Anyway.
Yes.
God. Anyway, so I guess it needs to be addressed for that reason alone. No, I like it for what it is for the reasons I've said. I think it is a really good example of cinematography that was the spearhead of what it is, which is a comic book adaptation mixed with good practical and CG like VFX with very interesting camera work and all done on a stage, which I think is very impressive because at this time you could definitely tell what was staged and what was not, what is real, real on-set location was staged. That being said, I agree with Mike. It spawned a whole rash of truckers that I can't stand that always cut me off and try to run me off the road. And I think it is, but I also think it's very interesting to see how far Sparta, as ancient history, has still really ingrained itself into Western culture and Western civilization. It's very interesting to see the patterns and demographic of it. And it's also very interesting to see how far this movie resurfaced it into the modern era, because it really did. Say what you will, everyone saw it, everyone talked about it, and everyone, you either see a shield or a helmet or you hear lines. This is Sparta. I can't tell you how many fucking times I've heard that goddamn line, and it's cool. It's very interesting. It's a cool line. It's a cool cinema thing. It's just been burned by geeks and nerds and internet trolls. But
Nerds and internet.
but I just it's hard to put a number on it because I see for what it is. I see the effort into it, but at the same time, I get frustrated when people say this actually happened. Did you know Leonidas had nipple rings? Cool, thanks. So I'm gonna give it like a 7 out of 10. I'm gonna go straight round it up to the highest number kind of thing. Oh, 7 out of 10 screaming Mel Gibsons. I almost missed it. There we go.
It's always fun to go last. Yeah, it's like we keep saying, this is not really a movie. It's more like a cultural event, at least for everyone that lived through it. I didn't really expect much. I got more than I was expecting, and yeah, I'm glad that I watched it once. It's a very interesting story, the real original one. It's worth making into a movie. I think it's worth making into a better movie, like especially with how cheap it is, with CGI and stuff. Like if somebody really wanted to make a very good film, they could. But yeah, this is an interesting movie that holds the time and place in history, cinematic history and everything. And it's a very interesting transitional period, between Marvel and between like what, Hollywood was in a way. But anyway.
Mike almost shit himself, so there you go.
No, fun. Well, the way it goes. I guess he's a Persian. But no, I mean, it's it's an interesting movie. That being said, I'm going to give it a 6.5. And I don't really ever expect to watch it again. So,
nice.
Putting those scores into the calculator that will tell us if the Persians are going to burn Athens, which they did, we get a score of 6.566666666666667.
Error.
There we go.
The number of the beast.
Yeah. Which war animal is Xerxes going to bring now?
I will put a caveat on this for I guess the score in general is that if this had based on true events or based on a true story, this movie would have a 2.
Yes,
but because or a 1, but because it's a comic book movie and it's on the war movie forums all the time. It's a war movie.
Yeah,
so. I am kind. I'm kind with my scoring.
I will spare all Sparta.
I will give you women who have herpes and have their face fucked up.
Do feel satiated.
Baghdad's best.
Baghdad's best.
Oh, I can feel it, Mr. Xerxes.
Mr. Xerxes.
Oh,
Christ. Oh. So
there's nothing wrong with seeing some good tits. Like, this is a great example. 300? I mean, there's no like giant, fake, disgusting tits in here. It's all real, nice, perky, good shit. It's like, okay.
remember, it's pre-2010s. We're not into that fucking fake everything age.
Well, fake tits have been around for a long time.
True, but I really feel like Kardashian shit blew up like after 2010. I don't know.
Yeah, well, true. So yeah, it's just nice to see.
Is this what happens at the end of the pod? We're gonna have a very heated, or we're gonna have a very heated discussion about when fake tits started taking the forefront of movies. I mean, I'm down to have that conversation. I mean,
this is
fine.
It's like what Howard Hughes did in the 50s. It's like how far can I get away with, bras?
We can go to MrSkin.com to date ourselves to find out where we can find the tits in the movie. So,
and on that note.
We'll have the tit conversation another time.
We can follow that up. Someone find us a war movie full of tits, and we'll have that conversation.
Don't say that. Yeah, fucking.
You're gonna
Total Recall, Nate.
You're gonna pull the FDR. Oh yeah, true. Yeah. You're gonna pull the FDR thing where my cock still works. You're gonna pull up that movie.
Does my cock still work? That's a lot of tits though.
Total Recall, yeah, triple titty.
Dude, we could do it. We could do a commentary on that.
If you want us to do a Total Recall commentary, please comment on this video.
Oh fuck! I love that movie, but like it's
so good.
Again, that was another one my dad had me watch when I was a kid, and I said,
weeks.
I'm looking at tits, like triple tits on a screen, and it was like, is that possible?
What mutation do we need to acquire?
Oh, I found out my roommate that I had in Iraq jerked off to that shit, among other things.
No, well,
he was like into that like weird fucking like
so
triple.
He liked triple things that only existed in the Mars movie in the 80s.
Is there a whole triple titty like fucking subculture? Probably.
Yes, there is. There's definitely porn of it because he left it on one time.
But triple titty world headquarters based out of Austin, Texas.
He'd go and like rock a piss or take a shit or something and like leave his computer open, and I'm like, what the fuck? There was like tentacle porn, triple titty porn. I'm like,
well, yeah.
And I asked him like, are you really into this? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, we're fucked as a society.
Oni-chan.
Like, God damn, like
Oni-chan.
The hentai, that shit, anime in general is just Japan's fucking retaliation for us nuking the shit out of them.
When you drop 2 nukes on a population, you're gonna have something going on.
Yeah, they're like, well, we're going to kill your culture from within. It's going to be way worse than these 2 little fucking firecrackers you dropped in 45.
Yeah, but then they destroyed our economy, so anyway,
right. They won. They've literally won.
It's Alan Deming's fault. He rebuilt Japan so well that they did way better than us with everything.
They built so many CD players that they just took over. So,
dude, seriously, there's guys that sleep with a fucking pillow with an anime chick on it instead of going out and like finding a real woman. Seriously. And
my waifu.
Yeah, exactly. They've won. They've taken over. They've completely castrated us. So yeah, the 2 little firecrackers we dropped 70 fucking years ago. Okay, you guys, you made your point. Like, let's stop this whole fucking thing.
We're in Old Bay hour, so this is allowed.
Somewhere, I know, there's a Japanese Naval Imperial High Command that's planning all of this.
They did. I'm sure they did.
That yes, we might have lost the war, but it was a plan. Yes, they will know that consumerism is the real downfall.
Soon
we planned Midway to fail.
Soon they will titty fuck Goose Down. Yes,
it's like they're fitting like wooden propellers onto like Game Boys. Like, what are they doing now?
Dude, here's the thing: they're scared of a fucking gun behind every blade of grass. We'll give them a waifu. There ain't gonna be a gun behind that blade of grass. There'll be some incel jerking off onto a pillow. Like,
they just didn't realize that their whole demographics of their population would fall off the map, though. So now it's only young people taking care of old people in Japan.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like,
well, little error, miscalculation.
Just imagine how big all those old that high command group is of all those old people.
Oh, fucking insane. Anyway, we're off the rails as usual. We've already wrapped this bitch up.
It's Old Bay hour. We're allowed to go off the rails.
Oh God.
So.
Well,
yeah.
If you made it here, I apologize. See you guys next week. You see, slaughtering all those men of yours has, well, it's left a nasty cramp in my leg, so kneeling will be hard for me. Unlike Michael. Catch you guys next week.
Gandhi.
God damn it.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a rating. Otherwise, Mel Gibson won't stop screaming. If you like this content, make sure to check out our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram pages. If you want to directly support our work, make sure to check out our Patreon. All these links are in the description below. Until the next time, Scuttlebutt out.